Welcome to the National Trust's S.H. Ervin Gallery and to the 2021 Salon de Refusés, the alternative Archibald and Wynne Prize selection exhibition. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We currently find ourselves at a time where people are no longer able to view the exhibition in person. So we'd like to invite you to this virtual viewing of the Salon and hope you enjoy it. The Salon de Refusés is one of the most popular and highly anticipated exhibitions in the Sydney Arts calendar. Each year, our guest selectors are allowed to go behind the scenes at the Art Gallery of New South Wales to choose an alternative exhibition from the many hundreds of entries entered into the prizes but not selected in the official exhibition. The original Salon de Refusés, or Salon of the Refused, was staged in Paris in 1863 by command of Napoleon III for those artists whose work had been refused by the jury of the official Salon. In that year, the French Academy rejected a staggering 2,800 canvases submitted for their annual Salon exhibition. Among those refused were Paul Cézanne, Camille Pissarro, James Whistler and Edouard Manet, who entered his legendary painting, Luncheon on the Grass. This particular work was regarded as a scandalous affront to taste. The jury also argued that these artists were in clear danger to society and that the slightest encouragement would be risky. Since there were very few independent art exhibitions in France, the taste of the buying public was dictated almost entirely by the Academy. Most members of the art buying public invested only in artists sanctioned by the Salon. Rejection by the Academy therefore threatened many artists with professional extinction. The protests that followed the Academy's 1863 decision were so public and so pointed that eventually Napoleon III himself appeared at the Palais de Industrie and demanded to see the rejected works. He then instructed the Academy to reconsider its selection, and when it refused, the Emperor decreed that the rejected paintings go on display in a separate exhibition. And so the phrase Salon de Refusés entered into the world's artistic lexicon. Over 100 years later, the S.H. Ervin Gallery has revived the tradition and the name. Just as the original Salon de Refusés generated much interest with the Parisian public, so too our Salon hopes to rival the real thing. Robin Sweeney, who hails from northern New South Wales, is represented in the Wynne Prize by this work, All Our Histories. It depicts three unassuming houses on a street in South Broken Hill, Barkindji country. Robin's work is very much based on old houses in the Australian countryside, and she captures their histories, their souls and their stories. This work is particularly interesting because of the brown-black background, which also references the slag heap at Broken Hill. Robin says these types of houses were part of the landscape she grew up in and are a significant part of our Australian story. A home can symbolise many things. They can represent security and safety, but that illusion can be tenuous. They float like a mirage on multiple horizon lines on the edge of the desert. Collectively, they are all part of our histories. Braidwood-based painter John R. Walker is represented in the Wynne Prize by this work, Memorial, Archival Oil on Polyester. Memorial is one of a series of paintings whose genesis was the result of a number of visits to Urani's grave near Molong, west of Orange. This grove is one of the few remaining Indigenous carved tree grave sites left. Warrnambool-based artist Catherine Ryan is represented in our Wynne Prize selection with this work, End of the Road, Oil on Linen. Catherine says of her work, with the light almost gone and the night closing in, there is a quietening of the day that lends itself to introspection and reflection. A summoning of our inward and interior life. The sensory, spiritual, thoughtful and emotional are brought more to the fore. Having known this landscape my whole life, time and memory converge in a moment's view. The fading light reveals and conceals views, with the most silhouetted structure of the old pines almost floating in an ethereal space. Mantua Ngala is one of the most exciting young artists coming out of the Panyatula artist movement, and this work, Untitled, Acrylic on Linen, was our selection from the Wynne Prize. The lines in this painting represent the sandhills at the rockhole site of Marapinti, west of the Pollock Hills in Western Australia. A large group of ancestral women camped at this rock hole before travelling further east. While here, the women made nose bones, also known as marampinti, which are now only worn by the older generations in ceremonial occasions. As the women continued their travels, they gathered the berries, or desert raisins, which can be eaten or ground into a paste and cooked like damper. Jennifer Keeler-Milne, Sydney-based painter, is represented in the Wynne Prize with this work, Spring Wattle 3, Oil on Linen. Jennifer says that this work celebrates the arrival of spring in 2020 and her overwhelming desire to paint wattle. After enduring the tumultuous autumn and winter of 2020, spring felt especially welcome and uplifting. The acacias, with their cultural significance, radiant yellows and luminosity, embodied this joyful mood and moment. Victorian artist Warren Crossett has this work, The Polarity of a Local Creek, Oil laid on linen on board. Warren writes that the work documents a creek near to his home and it's from its foundation to joining a larger river. The first panel displays where the creek now commences, once pure and bursting with life, but soon it will be turned into a housing development. The second panel shows man's attempt at improving the water by creating an artificial lake with a sedimentary side catchment. The third panel shows an area hidden to most, which is tucked away behind an industrial area. Foul and rancid water enters the creek here. The final panel shows the creek downstream to a council that has protected the waterway and its surrounds. And although the water is suffering from the previous zones, it now looks at least very similar to what it would have looked like a few hundred years ago. Blue Mountains-based artist Christopher McVinish is represented by this work, Jeff and Nugget. It's a portrait of gallery owner Jeff White and his dog Nugget. Oil on linen. Jeff White is director and owner of the Lost Bear Gallery in Katoomba. Jeff is deeply committed to his artists and takes an interest in their welfare beyond exhibitions. I've been one of his exhibiting artists for about a decade now and gotten to know him really well. Yet there is something enigmatic about Jeff, which I thought would be a good challenge to try and capture in a portrait. Jeff and his dog Nugget are indivisible form of each other and the gallery. There was no question of not including Nugget. For centuries, artists have shown their respect for canines by painting them with their best human friends. Daniel Parter has painted this work, Guy Warren, Oil on Canvas, who incidentally is also the same sitter as the 2021 Archibald Prize winning work by Peter Wegner. Daniel writes, on the 16th of April, Guy Warren turned 100. This milestone was a compelling reason to attempt a portrait of Guy. A homage to an old friend and mentor, I wanted somehow to achieve a sense of his age, nobility and affection I have for him, so there's several challenges to the painting as I aspired to this cause. An artist I felt had the qualities of importance and relevance was a French-Polish painter, Mila Mutter. I discovered her work in Paris years earlier. The fascinating portraits of internal psychological resonance make me realise what a portrait could be. Guy has as much to offer as a subject. Beside his form and character, his colourful history and the deep intent of his work was a stimulus for me to find something underlying. Caroline Zielinski's painting in the Archibald selection is the Wedgewood Heart, portrait of Jonathan Dalton, Oil on Linen. Caroline writes, hyperrealist painting Jonathan Dalton once told me a story of taking his daughter to Coogee Beach, like he does most mornings. As he sat there, a group of women approached him and asked if he was widowed. That is the expression etched on an artist's face, a widow to every painting they create. Here he sits at his easel with a signature lemon still life and custom-built 4-tier mobile palette. This painting by Jane Guthleben, Greetings from Bib and Luke, is a portrait of artist Lucy Cullerton, Oil on Board. The artist says, Lucy Cullerton's farm, Bib and Luke, is like another world. She takes in injured birds, emaciated sheep, rescue dogs, horses, emu, pigs, you name it, and all of them join this raucous menagerie at the southern New South Wales property where she lives and works. Visiting Lucy is like meeting Dr. Dolittle. I wanted to recreate Lucy's world as a snow dome, as a souvenir reminder of a unique and perfect world where she is at its centre and the creatures are happy and safe from harm. Award-winning painter Wendy Sharp is represented by this colourful work, Taylor Fontaine and the Magda Zubanskis, portrait of drag queen Taylor Fontaine and her band, oil on linen. Wendy says of the painting, "I first saw Taylor Fontaine and Magda Zubanskis perform hilarious lip sync and satire at the Imperial Hotel in Erskineville. I loved their crazy over-the-top costumes, smeared lipstick and manic witty stage show. When I decided to paint them, Taylor and the other band members, Shelby, Tonya and Terry, came to the studio to pose for me in full costume to the general applause of the neighbours and road workers." Craig Ruddy's portrait, I'm Gulpilil, portrait of David Gulpilil, mixed media on canvas, continues his interest in the sitter. This powerful, intimate portrait reflects the delicate transition as sitter David Gulpilil faces mortality, staring down death and reconnecting with spirit as he nears the end of his incredible life. Craig Ruddy's previous portrait of Gulpilil, Two Worlds, won the 2004 Archibald Prize. This portrait is a tribute to Gulpilil after the artist and actor met again at Gulpilil's Adelaide home, where he's been receiving treatment for lung cancer during the last few years. Yonglu elder and one of Australia's most celebrated actors, David Gulpilil is renowned for his roles across nearly 5 decades of cinema, including Walkabout, Storm Boy, The Tracker and Crocodile Dundee. Leading Australian artist Nicholas Harding is represented by this portrait, Heather Mitchell AM, oil on linen, and continues his interest in the theatrical world. Nicholas Harding writes, "Heather is a dear friend and an exemplary actor of stage and screen, memorably holding the stage when she played Catherine McGregor in the Sydney Theatre Company's 2017 production of Still Point Turning. She also has appeared in many films and television productions. I had the opportunity to draw the ensemble of actors, including Heather, during rehearsals for the recent Sydney Theatre Company production of Playing Beatty Bow. This portrait was painted from a large watercolour and gouache study painted from life in my studio." This painting by Sally Robinson of Professor Veena Sahajwalla is acrylic on canvas. Sally says of the work, "Painting portraits allows artists a short time to hang out with their heroes. Veena Sahajwalla is one of mine." Scientia Professor Veena Sahajwalla is the founding director of the Centre for Sustainable Materials Research and Technology at UNSW, an Australia Research Council laureate professor. She is an internationally recognised materials scientist, engineer and inventor revolutionising recycling science. Veena is known internationally as the inventor of green steel, a process using millions of waste tyres as a partial replacement for coke, and numerous other technologies that reform problematic wastes into value-added materials and products for the built environment and manufacturing. David Fairbairn's portrait, Double Lives, DF and Essay number 1, self-portrait with artist Suzanne Archer, acrylic and gouache on board. As David says, "With the advent of COVID-19, I was unable to work with my regular sitters. Therefore, my partner, the artist Suzanne Archer, offered to sit for me in regular 2-hour sessions. Initially, I worked on individual portraits of her, which then led to a new series of double portraits in which I included myself. It was an interesting challenge in that I had to construct the drawings and paintings of myself at a separate time, mostly with the use of a mirror and a photo documentation to locate the relationship between us. The resulting series, Double Lives, reflects a long and sustained personal and artistic relationship extending back more than 3 decades.